She ran to protect her children. He searched for the truth he never knew. For 7 years, Emma kept a secret that could change everything. But when Nathan Hayes, the billionaire she once loved, walked back into her life, the past came crashing down. Now, he knows. And he won't stop until he claims what's his children. And her heart. Can love survive betrayal, lost time, and the shadows of the past? Or will Emma run again? Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more heart-stopping stories like this. See you in the next one. Emma Carter pressed her palms against the bare back of her client, working her fingers in slow, deliberate strokes to ease the tension from his muscles. The dim lighting and the scent of lavender oil in the air were meant to create a calming atmosphere, but inside, her mind was anything but calm. As she kneaded the knots along his spine, her thoughts spiraled back to the same place they always did. Money. Or rather, the lack of it. Her uncle, Robert, the only family she had left, was getting sicker by the day. His kidneys were failing, and the hospital bills kept piling up. Every time she handed over her paycheck, it barely covered his medication, let alone the treatments he truly needed. She had taken on double shifts at the massage parlor, sacrificing sleep and any semblance of a personal life. Still, it wasn't enough. Emma sighed softly, pushing her worries aside as she finished the session. Her client groaned in satisfaction, stretching lazily before slipping a few bills onto the table. She mustered a polite smile and thanked him, watching as he strolled out. Leaving her alone in the small massage room, she glanced down at the tip. It was generous, but not life-changing. Definitely not enough. As she stepped into the staff lounge, she spotted Carla leaning against the counter, counting a wad of cash with a smug grin. Carla had been working at the massage parlor for less time than Emma, yet she always seemed to walk away with more money, a lot more. Emma sat down with a sigh, rubbing her temples, but Carla's laughter caught her attention. "Rough night?" Carla asked, flicking through her crisp bills. Emma shrugged. "Same as always." Carla smirked, leaning in slightly. "You know, you could be making triple what you are now." Emma's stomach twisted at the implication in her coworker's voice. She knew exactly what Carla meant. She had overheard whispers, seen the subtle exchanges between some of the other girls and their high-paying clients. This wasn't just a massage parlor, at least not for those who knew how to play the game. "I don't do that," Emma said firmly, even though she wasn't sure who she was convincing, Carla or herself. Carla chuckled. "Relax. I'm not telling you to sleep with anyone, but let's be real. These men come here for more than just a massage. A little extra attention, a well-placed touch, a whispered compliment. They pay for the experience, Emma, and they pay big." Emma swallowed hard. It wasn't the first time she'd heard this speech. She had always ignored it, always told herself she would never cross that line. But tonight, as she thought about Uncle Robert struggling to breathe in his hospital bed, as she pictured herself coming home, empty, handed again, something inside her wavered. "I'm just saying," Carla continued, lowering her voice, "if you ever change your mind, it's easy money. And trust me, these guys don't mind paying for something special. They're rich. Filthy rich." Emma didn't respond. She stood abruptly, grabbing her things. "I need some air." Outside, the city buzzed around her, neon signs flickering in the damp night air. The cold breeze did little to soothe her nerves. She wanted to scream at the unfairness of it all. How hard she worked, how much she sacrificed, and yet it was never enough. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. No, she wouldn't do it. She had dignity. She had limits. But limits didn't pay hospital bills. And dignity wouldn't save Uncle Robert's life. As she turned to head back inside, The soft chime of the parlor's entrance bell caught her attention. A man stepped in, his presence commanding in a way that made her breath hitch. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of obscene wealth. His sharp jawline, sun-kissed complexion, and piercing eyes made it impossible to look away. Nathan Hayes. She didn't know his name yet, but she would soon. And in the days to come, she would come to realize that this man, this stranger, would change the course of her life forever. Emma stood frozen for a moment, watching as the man, Nathan Hayes, stepped inside the parlor. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, his movements deliberate, his gaze sharp as he scanned the dimly lit space. There was something about him that made her pulse quicken, though she wasn't sure if it was intrigue or intimidation. Probably both. She turned away, willing herself to focus on her job. Clients came and went every night, and he was just another face. That was what she told herself, at least. Minutes later, her boss entered the staff room, clapping her hands together as she addressed the therapists. "We have a VIP guest tonight," she announced, looking particularly pleased. "A very important businessman, one of the wealthiest in the state. Treat him well, and he'll be a regular." Emma barely paid attention until the boss's gaze landed on her. "Emma, you'll be taking care of him." Her head jerked up. "Me?" "You," the boss confirmed, already walking her toward the private rooms. "Make sure he enjoys his time here. And if he wants—" She cast a knowing glance. Extra services. Well, you know the deal. Emma's stomach twisted. She had heard the rumors about wealthy clients paying exorbitant amounts for more than just a massage, but she had never once considered it. She wasn't like Carla. She swallowed hard and nodded, forcing a neutral expression as she entered the private room. The soft glow of candles flickered against the walls, the air thick with the scent of warm vanilla and eucalyptus. The table was already set, fresh towels folded neatly on the side. The door opened behind her, and she turned just as Nathan stepped inside. His presence filled the room, his expensive cologne mingling with the spa's calming fragrances. Up close, he was even more striking. Broad shoulders, strong jawline, eyes so dark they seemed to pull her in. "Mr. Hayes," she greeted, her voice more steady than she felt. "Emma, is it?" His voice was deep, smooth. She nodded, gesturing toward the table. "Please lie down. I'll begin with your back." He didn't move right away. Instead, he studied her, his gaze slow and deliberate. It was unnerving how much attention he gave her, as if he was reading something beyond what was on the surface. Finally, he removed his jacket, draping it over the chair, then unbuttoned his crisp white shirt. Emma kept her eyes trained on the massage oil, trying not to focus on the way his muscles flexed as he moved. He lay face down on the table, a white towel covering the lower half of his body. She inhaled deeply and placed her hands on his shoulders, pressing gently at first, before kneading into his tense muscles. The moment she touched him, he let out a quiet, satisfied sigh. And for some reason, it made her stomach tighten. Her hands worked in slow, practiced motions, smoothing over his back, down to his shoulder blades, then lower. He was incredibly tense, though she wasn't sure if it was from stress or something else. Minutes passed in silence until he finally spoke. "You're good at this." Emma smiled faintly, keeping her focus on the massage. "I've been doing it for a while." "Do you enjoy it?" She hesitated. It was a simple question, but the answer wasn't as straightforward. She enjoyed helping people, but the job itself, this place, the hidden expectations, wore her down. "It pays the bills," she said finally. Not enough, though. Her fingers faltered for a split second before she recovered. His words weren't a question. They were a statement. Nathan shifted slightly, turning his head so he could see her better. How much do you make here? Emma frowned, confused by the sudden direction of the conversation. Why does it matter? He exhaled, as if contemplating something. Then, with a lazy, almost teasing tone, he said, because I'd like to offer you a deal. Emma's hands stilled. A deal? He turned onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow, the towel still securely in place. I'll pay you $20,000. Her heart nearly stopped. Excuse me. He smirked. 20 grand for a kiss. Silence stretched between them. Emma stared at him, expecting to hear the punchline of a joke. When it didn't come, her stomach twisted into knots. A kiss. That was all he wanted. She didn't realize she was gripping the bottle of massage oil too tightly until her fingers ached. Why? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Nathan's smirk softened into something unreadable. Because I'm curious about you. Emma swallowed. $20,000 could cover months of Uncle Robert's medical expenses. It could keep her afloat, ease the constant worry that gnawed at her. But could she cross that line? She didn't know what scared her more. The idea of taking the money, or the fact that she was actually considering it. Emma's heart pounded as she stared at Nathan, the weight of his offer pressing down on her. $20,000. More money than she had ever held in her hands at once. Enough to pay for Uncle Robert's hospital bills for months, to finally buy his medication without bargaining with pharmacists or skipping meals to afford it. But it was just a kiss, right? Her fingers curled into her palms as she considered his words. A kiss should be nothing, something fleeting, over in seconds. Yet, she knew deep down that if she agreed, something inside her would change. The unspoken line she had drawn between herself and the other women at the massage parlor, the ones who whispered about extra services, would blur. Nathan watched her, unreadable, as if he knew the battle raging inside her mind. He didn't press, didn't coax, just waited, patient and sure, as if he already knew her answer. Emma inhaled sharply. Say no. That was the logical choice. The safe choice. But her lips parted, and a different word slipped out. Okay. His dark eyes flickered, a trace of satisfaction passing over his face. He sat up fully now, moving with unhurried ease, and pulled a stack of crisp $100 bills from his wallet, placing them on the side table. The sight of them made her stomach flip. Emma took a shaky step forward, hesitating before placing her hands lightly on his shoulders. He was warm, solid beneath her touch, and that realization made her pulse jump. She had kissed men before, of course, but not like this, not with a price tag attached. Nathan tilted his head slightly, his gaze dropping to her lips before returning to her eyes. He wasn't impatient, wasn't demanding. If anything, he looked amused, like he was enjoying the way she hesitated, how she was enjoying the way she hesitated, how she was overthinking a single kiss as if it was something far greater. Emma exhaled, steeling herself, and leaned in. The moment her lips met his, her breath caught. She expected it to be quick, meaningless, just a brush of mouths to seal the deal. But Nathan didn't let it be that simple. His hand slid up, fingers threading lightly through her hair, tilting her head just enough to deepen the kiss. It wasn't rushed or aggressive, but there was an undeniable pull, a heat that made her fingers tremble as they curled against his bare skin. He tasted like mint and something richer, something dangerous. Emma squeezed her eyes shut, telling herself it didn't matter, that it meant nothing. But the way his lips moved against hers, the slow and deliberate way he kissed her, made her body betray her. She felt her breath quicken, her heart race. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it was over. Nathan pulled back first, studying her with a knowing smirk. Emma stood frozen, lips tingling, a strange warmth coiling deep in her stomach. "Not bad," he murmured, amusement flickering in his tone. "For 20 grand, I'd say it was worth it." Her face burned. She wanted to say something sharp, something that would wipe that smug look off his face, but her mind was blank. Instead, she stepped back, clearing her throat. "Are we done?" Nathan leaned back, stretching lazily, completely at ease. "For now." She swallowed hard, turned on her heel, and walked out before she could embarrass herself further. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she replayed the moment over and over in her head, no matter how much she tried to push it away. It was supposed to be nothing, just a transaction. So why did she still feel his lips on hers? The next evening, Emma was back at work, trying to pretend nothing had changed. She focused on her clients, on the rhythmic motions of her hands, on anything but the man who had completely unraveled her sense of control the night before. But she didn't have to look for him, because he came back. Just as she was finishing a session, the front door chimed, and when she glanced up, her breath hitched. Nathan Hayes stood in the lobby, casually speaking with the receptionist, as if he belonged there, as if he hadn't just thrown her entire world into chaos the night before. Emma turned quickly, hoping to slip away before he noticed her, but his voice stopped her in her tracks. "Emma. Emma." She shut her eyes for half a second before schooling her face into a neutral expression and turning to face him. "Mr. Hayes." He smirked, and her stomach flipped against her will. "I'd like to book another session." Her heart pounded. "I'm fully booked tonight," she lied. He arched a brow. "That's funny. Your boss told me you were available." "Damn it. Damn it." She forced a tight smile. "Then follow me." Leading him into the private room, Emma tried to focus, tried to remember that he was just another client. But as soon as he lay back on the table, watching her with that same unreadable intensity, she knew she was in trouble. Nathan Hayes wasn't done with her. And worse? She wasn't sure she wanted him to be. Emma had spent the last few weeks convincing herself that Nathan Hayes was just another client, that he wasn't different, that she could treat him like any other man who walked into the parlor, no matter how intensely his presence rattled her. But she was wrong. He kept coming back. Every night, he booked her. Every night, he watched her with those sharp, knowing eyes, making her stomach tighten, and her breath hitch in ways she didn't understand. And every night, she told herself she was in control. Until she wasn't. Until the night he asked her to stay after closing. Emma should have said no. She knew that. But when Nathan handed her an envelope, thicker than any she had ever seen, her resolve wavered. "Take it," he said smoothly, watching her hesitate. "It's enough to cover whatever hospital bills you're worrying about." Her fingers trembled as she held the envelope. It was heavy, too heavy. She looked up at him, heart pounding. "And what do you want in return?" His lips curled, but there was something unreadable in his eyes. "Dinner." Emma's stomach flipped. "Dinner?" "Just dinner," he repeated, as if the idea of him paying an obscene amount of money for something so simple wasn't absurd. She should have refused. Instead, she found herself sitting across from him in the private dining room of an upscale restaurant, the soft flicker of candlelight casting shadows on his perfectly sculpted face. She barely touched her food, too aware of the way he watched her, of the way his presence filled the space between them. "You haven't asked me why," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. Emma looked up. Why what? Why I keep coming back. She hesitated, gripping the stem of her wine glass. Nathan chuckled, shaking his head. No, Emma. I like you. Her breath caught. He leaned in, his dark eyes locked on hers. I don't know what it is about you, but I can't get you out of my head. And trust me, that's not something that happens often. She swallowed hard. This. She gestured between them, desperate to regain control.
It's just a business transaction.
Is it? He murmured, tilting his head slightly. Because last time I checked, you didn't kiss me like it was just business. Heat rushed to her cheeks. She set her glass down, trying to compose herself. You paid me, remember? Nathan's gaze darkened. That doesn't mean it wasn't real. Emma exhaled sharply. She needed to leave. But before she could push her chair back, his phone vibrated against the table. He glanced at the screen, his expression instantly hardening. Then, before she could blink, he answered. What is it? His voice was sharp now, cold. Emma couldn't hear the other person, but whatever they said made Nathan's jaw tighten. I told you, I don't care, he bit out. She means nothing to me. The words sent a chill down Emma's spine. She didn't know who he was talking about, but something about the way he said it, the way his entire demeanor changed, sent alarm bells ringing in her head. Nathan ended the call and exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face before looking back at her. Sorry, he muttered. Business. Emma forced a smile, but her heart was racing. I should go. Nathan frowned, but before he could say anything, she was already pushing back her chair. She didn't belong here. She didn't belong in his world. And she sure as hell didn't want to find out who the woman on the other end of that call was. For the next few days, Emma threw herself into work, trying to forget Nathan Hayes. But fate had other plans. Because 2 weeks later, she found herself staring at a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. Her stomach twisted as she gripped the edge of the sink, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. No, this wasn't happening. She couldn't be pregnant. Except she was. Panic clawed at her chest. She needed to tell Nathan. Didn't he? Her hands trembled as she picked up her phone. She typed out a message. We need to talk. It's important. Her thumb hovered over the send button. But before she could press it, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered hesitantly. Hello? A woman's voice sneered through the line. If you know what's good for you, you'll stay away from Nathan. Emma's blood ran cold. Who is this? The woman laughed.
I'm the one he's marrying.
The floor seemed to disappear beneath her feet. No. This wasn't real. Nathan had never mentioned a fiancé, never given any indication that he was with someone else. Emma's chest tightened, nausea creeping up her throat. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, the woman continued, but trust me, you're nothing. Just another distraction. He'll forget about you soon enough. The line went dead. Emma stood there, frozen, the weight of those words suffocating her. She looked down at the pregnancy test, still clutched in her hand. Then she did the only thing she could. She packed her bags and disappeared. The town Emma moved to was small, quiet, and far removed from the chaos of the city. It was the kind of place where people knew each other by name, where the days passed slowly, and where she could start over. She arrived with nothing but a few suitcases, a broken heart, and the two tiny lives growing inside her. The first few months were the hardest. Pregnancy drained her body, and fear drained her mind. She had no job, no stable income, and no clue how she was going to do this alone. But she refused to crumble. For the sake of her unborn children, she fought. She found a modest apartment. Small, but enough. She took a job at a respectable massage clinic, where clients came for actual therapy, not whispered offers of extra services. She built a routine, working long hours to save up for the future. And when the twins were born, a boy and a girl, she cried harder than she ever had in her life. Lily and Liam, her miracles, her purpose. She had thought she understood love before, but nothing compared to the overwhelming devotion she felt for them. Every sleepless night, every exhausted moment, every sacrifice, it was all worth it when she held them in her arms. Years passed, and life settled into something stable, something good. Liam was gentle and thoughtful, always watching the world with wide, curious eyes. Lily, on the other hand, was fearless and fierce, always ready to fight for what she wanted, even if it was just an extra cookie. They were her entire world, and she had done everything in her power to keep them safe, to keep them hidden. But no matter how much distance she put between herself and the past, Nathan Hayes had never truly left her thoughts. Not a day went by where she didn't wonder if he had ever looked for her, if he had ever realized what he had lost, if he had ever regretted it. But those thoughts were dangerous, so she buried them, because none of it mattered anymore. Nathan had made his choice, and so had she. 7 years later, the morning sun streamed through the small kitchen window as Emma poured milk into Liam's cereal bowl. He grinned up at her, his dark eyes, so much like his father's, shining with excitement. "Mom, can we go to the park later?" he asked, kicking his legs under the table. Lily, sitting across from him, scowled. "No. You promised we could go to the bookstore." Emma sighed, rubbing her temples. "We can do both, okay? As long as you two stop fighting over every little thing." The twins exchanged stubborn glares, but ultimately nodded in agreement. Emma smiled, watching them eat, her heart full and aching all at once. This was her life now, peaceful, stable, and she wouldn't change it for anything. But peace never lasted forever. Later that evening, she arrived at the resort where she worked, tying her apron around her waist as she stepped inside. The place was elegant, catering to high-end clients who came to escape their stressful lives. It was nothing like the old massage parlor. Here, she was respected. Here, she felt safe. Until she saw him. At first, she thought she was imagining things. But no. There, sitting in the waiting lounge, was Nathan Hayes. Her breath caught in her throat, her vision tunneling as she took in the sight of him. 7 years had passed, but he looked the same, taller than she remembered, broader, his presence just as overpowering. He was dressed in an expensive suit, one hand resting lazily on his knee as he scrolled through his phone. She had spent years preparing for this moment, and yet she had no idea what to do. Run? Hide? Pretend she didn't know him? But before she could decide, his eyes lifted and locked onto hers. The world tilted. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, Nathan stood. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs, panic clawing up her throat as he took a step toward her. "Emma," he said, his voice low, unreadable. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to stand tall. His jaw tightened. It's been a long time. She nodded, keeping her expression neutral. It has. Silence stretched between them, thick with everything unspoken. Then Nathan's gaze flicked down, scanning her uniform, the resort's logo embroidered neatly over her chest. "You work here," he said, more to himself than to her. Emma lifted her chin. "I do." His eyes darkened, but before he could say anything else, a receptionist called out, "Mr. Hayes, your therapist is ready for you." Nathan's gaze didn't waver from Emma's. A slow, knowing smirk curved his lips. "I'll wait," he said, eyes locked onto hers. "I want her." Emma's stomach twisted. She should have expected this. Nathan Hayes never let anything, or anyone, slip away from him. And now, after all these years, he had found her. She just had to pray he never found out about the twins. Emma's hands trembled as she gathered the massage oils, doing everything in her power to steady her breathing. She couldn't let him see how much he affected her. 7 years had passed. Them years of silence, of rebuilding, of pretending he didn't exist. And now, as if fate had been waiting for the perfect moment to shatter her carefully constructed life, Nathan Hayes had walked right back into it. She forced herself to move as the receptionist led him to her assigned room. The walls felt smaller, the air too thick. Her pulse roared in her ears as she heard his footsteps behind her, slow and deliberate, each one bringing back memories she had tried to forget. Once inside, she turned to face him. He was already watching her, his expression unreadable. "Lie down," she said, keeping her voice professional, distant. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "No small talk? No." She met his gaze head on. "I don't believe we have anything to catch up on." Something flickered in his dark eyes, something sharp, something unreadable. But he said nothing. Instead, he removed his jacket, loosened the top buttons of his dress shirt, and finally lay down on the massage table, resting his head against the cushion. Emma let out a slow breath and stepped closer. Her fingers hovered over his back for a second longer than necessary before she forced herself to focus. He was just another client, just another session. But the moment she touched him, heat coiled in her stomach. His body was warm beneath her hands, his muscles tense under her fingertips. She worked carefully, methodically, trying to will away the way her skin tingled at the contact. For a while, he didn't speak. And then, in that deep, steady voice that once made her breath hitch, he said, "You ran away." Emma's hands stilled for a fraction of a second before she forced herself to continue. "I moved," she corrected. Nathan let out a low hum, as if amused by her answer. She pressed harder into his shoulder blades. "I didn't think you'd care." He let out a slow breath, but there was something deliberate about the way he shifted under her touch, like he was trying to get a reaction out of her. "I looked for you," he said after a pause. Emma's fingers tightened slightly before she forced herself to relax. "I find that hard to believe." His head turned slightly, his sharp gaze pinning her in place. "You changed your number." A lump formed in her throat, but she swallowed it down. "It doesn't matter anymore." Nathan studied her for a long moment before exhaling and turning back, letting her continue. Silence stretched between them again, but this time it felt heavier. Charged. And then, as if he had been waiting for the perfect moment, He dropped the question that made her blood turn cold. "Do you have kids?" Emma's hands froze. For one terrifying second, she couldn't breathe. Her mind screamed at her to play it cool, to keep moving, to act as if the question didn't just throw her entire world into panic. But she knew Nathan. She knew that he could sense lies the way sharks sensed blood in the water. So she did the only thing she could. She let out a short, forced laugh. "What kind of question is that?" Nathan didn't answer immediately. He shifted onto his side, propping himself up on his elbow, and looked at her. Really looked at her, as if trying to pull the truth straight from her eyes. "A simple one," he murmured. "Do you have kids, Emma?" She felt sick. She needed to get out of here. Forcing herself to remain calm, she took a step back. "Your session is over," she said, turning to gather her things. Nathan didn't move. "I didn't say I was done." Emma inhaled sharply. "I have other clients." There was a beat of silence, and then, in a tone far too smooth, he said, "I'll book you again." Panic clawed at her chest. This couldn't happen. She couldn't let him get too close. Nathan Hayes had the power to destroy everything she had built, and he didn't even know it yet. She turned to face him one last time, hoping her expression conveyed every ounce of finality she could muster. "I suggest you don't." He smirked, the kind of smirk that said he had no intention of listening to her. Emma's stomach twisted. She had escaped him once, but she wasn't sure she could do it again. Emma barely made it out of the massage room before the panic clawing at her chest threatened to consume her. She needed air. She needed air. She needed to stay away from Nathan Hayes. But most of all, she needed to stay away from Nathan Hayes. Yet, deep down, she knew that wasn't going to happen. He would come back. He had already decided. And that terrified her. For 7 years, she had lived with the fear of what would happen if Nathan ever found out about the twins. She had convinced herself that as long as she stayed away, as long as she kept them hidden, they were safe. But now, with one unexpected encounter, everything was unraveling. That night, she barely slept. The next day, she did her best to pretend everything was normal. She dropped Liam and Lily off at school, forced a smile as they excitedly waved goodbye, and then went to work like she always did. But the moment she stepped into the resort, her worst fear came true. Nathan was there. Again. Sitting in the lounge, dressed in another impeccable suit, looking completely at ease. Like he belonged there, like he had all the time in the world to wait for her. Emma's stomach twisted. She turned on her heel, ready to disappear before he noticed her, but it was too late. "Emma. Memma." His voice was smooth, deep, and possible to ignore. She inhaled sharply before forcing herself to turn around. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon." Nathan smirked, his dark eyes gleaming something unreadable. "Didn't you?" She clenched her jaw. "I told you not to book me again." He leaned back in his chair, completely unfazed. "And I ignored you." Emma exhaled slowly, pressing her nails into her palm to steady herself. "I don't know what you're expecting from me, but I'm just here to do my job." Nathan tilted his head, watching her. "I think you know exactly what I expect." A cold chill ran down her spine. She opened her mouth, ready to shut this down before he could push further. But before she could speak, his next words nearly knocked the air from her lungs. "Are you going to answer my question now?" he asked casually. "Do you have kids?" Emma's heart stopped. For a moment, the entire world seemed to shrink. Her pulse pounded in her ears, her breath lodged somewhere between her lungs and her throat. She had expected this. She should have been ready. But nothing could have prepared her for the way he looked at her now. Sharp, observant, as if he already knew the truth, and was just waiting for her to confirm it. She forced herself to stay calm. "Why are you asking me that?" Nathan didn't blink. "Because I have a feeling you're lying to me." Emma's nails dug into her palm. "That's a pretty bold assumption." He arched a brow.
Am I wrong?
She needed to shut this down. Now. "Yes," she said firmly. "You are." It was a lie. A direct, deliberate lie. And she knew. She knew. He didn't believe her. But he didn't call her out on it. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, watching her so intently that she felt like he was peeling away every layer she had spent years building. "All right," he said finally, his voice deceptively light. "If you say so." Emma swallowed hard. That should have been the end of it. He should have let it go. But something told her he wouldn't. Nathan Hayes didn't back down. He didn't let things slip through his fingers. And that meant he would find out the truth. It was only a matter of time. Emma barely made it through the rest of her shift, her mind a blur of panic and worst-case scenarios. Nathan knew, or at least he suspected. And if there was one thing she had learned about him all those years ago, it was that he never let go of something once he set his sights on it. By the time she got home that evening, she felt like she was suffocating. Liam and Lily greeted her at the door, their bright smiles momentarily easing the crushing weight on her chest. "Mom, look." Liam held up a drawing, scribbled in bright colors. "It's us, you, me, and Lily." Emma forced a smile, kneeling down to take a better look. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Lily crossed her arms.
You forgot someone,
She pointed out.
Where's Uncle Robert?
Liam pouted.
Oh, I'll add him.
Emma's stomach twisted. "Where's Uncle Robert?" Not, "Where's Dad?" Because they had never asked. Because they had never known. And now, all of that was about to change. That night, after putting the twins to bed, Emma sat at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. She should tell Uncle Robert. He had been with her through everything. He deserved to know. But just as she was about to call him, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She knew who it was before she even answered. Emma. Nathan's deep voice came through the line, smooth and unreadable. "We need to talk." She gripped the edge of the table. "There's nothing to talk about." "I disagree," he said. "Meet me tomorrow." She shook her head, even though he couldn't see her. Nathan sighed, as if he had expected her answer. "Then I'll come to you." Emma's breath caught. "You don't even know where I live." A long pause. Then, "Do you really believe that?" Cold fear spread through her veins. Of course, he knew. He was Nathan Hayes. He had the resources, the money, the power. Finding her wouldn't have been difficult. "You have no right," she whispered. Nathan's voice remained calm, steady. "I have every right." Emma shut her eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "Please, Nathan, just leave it alone." Another pause. And then, softer this time? Her throat closed. She couldn't answer. She wouldn't answer. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said before ending the call. Emma stared at the screen, her hands trembling. This was it. The truth was coming out, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The next day, Emma woke up with a knot in her stomach. She went through her usual routine, preparing breakfast, dressing the twins for school, forcing smiles, but everything felt heavier, like a storm looming over her head. Nathan was coming, and there was nothing she could do to stop him. She dropped Liam and Lily off at school, hugging them a little tighter than usual, before heading home. She paced the small living room, her hands clammy, her mind racing. Would he be angry? Would he try to take them from her? Would he even care? A sharp knock on the door sent her heart slamming against her ribs. Emma forced a deep breath before walking over, gripping the doorknob with trembling fingers. She opened it, and there he was. Nathan stood in the doorway, his broad frame filling the space, dressed in another one of his expensive suits. But today, there was no teasing smirk, no amusement in his dark eyes. Today, he looked like a man with questions. And he was here for answers. Emma stepped aside wordlessly, allowing him in. He scanned the modest living room, the framed photos of Liam and Lily on the shelves, the scattered toys on the floor. His jaw tightened. "You lied to me," he said quietly, his voice controlled, but she could hear the underlying tension. Emma swallowed hard. "I." He turned to her, his gaze piercing. "How old are they?" She hesitated, but she knew there was no point in lying anymore. 6, she whispered. Nathan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Jesus, Emma." She looked away, wrapping her arms around herself. "I didn't have a choice." His head snapped toward her. "Didn't have a choice," his voice hardened. "You had every choice. You could have told me." Emma clenched her jaw. "And what would you have done, Nathan? Married me? Taken responsibility out of obligation? I wasn't going to trap you in a life you didn't want." His expression darkened. "You don't get to decide what I would have wanted." Her chest ached. "You were engaged." His eyes narrowed. "I never married her." Emma let out a bitter laugh. "It doesn't change anything. Back then, I was just a fling to you. Nothing more." Nathan stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Is that what you think?" His voice dropped, rough and unsteady. "That you meant nothing to me?" Emma's breath caught. She had spent years convincing herself of that very thing. But now, looking at him, seeing the raw emotion on his face, she wasn't so sure. "You were gone, Emma," he said, his voice quieter now. "You left without a word. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" Tears burned at the back of her eyes. "I was protecting them." Nathan's expression softened, just slightly. His gaze flickered toward the photos again. "Liam and Lily," he murmured, as if saying their names made them real. Emma wiped at her eyes, nodding. "They don't know about you." His jaw clenched. "That's going to change." Panic rose in her throat. "Nathan, I'm not going anywhere, Emma." His voice was firm, unwavering. "They're my kids. Our kids. And I will be in their lives." Emma stared at him, her heart pounding. This was happening. There was no running from it now. Emma stood frozen, her heart hammering in her chest as Nathan's words settled over her like a weight she couldn't escape. "I'm not going anywhere." She had spent years imagining this moment, dreading it, hoping it would never come. And now it was here. Nathan's gaze flickered toward the photos of Liam and Lily on the shelf, his fingers twitching as if he wanted to reach for them. There was something raw in his expression, something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. "How do you plan to be in their lives, Nathan?" Emma forced herself to say, crossing her arms tightly. "You can't just drop in and expect them to accept you overnight." Nathan's jaw tightened. I don't expect that. But I will be here. His voice was firm, unwavering. I lost 6 years with them, Emma. I won't lose any more. Emma swallowed, looking away. They don't even know you exist. Then it's time they find out. Panic coiled in her stomach. It's not that simple. They have a routine, a life. You showing up out of nowhere. It's going to confuse them. Scare them. Nathan exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. I get it. But I'm their father. And whether you like it or not, they deserve to know me. She knew he was right. But that didn't make it any easier. Emma rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of the past and the future pressing in all at once. If we do this, she said hesitantly, we do it on my terms. Slowly, no big surprises, no. Nathan took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. I'll do whatever it takes. His voice dropped, quieter this time. I just want to know them. Emma's chest tightened. She could still remember the way he had once made her feel, how easy it had been to fall into him, to believe she mattered to him. And for years, she had convinced herself it had all been an illusion, that he had never really cared. But now, seeing the way his hands clenched into fists, the way his voice cracked just slightly when he spoke about their children, maybe she had been wrong. Maybe a part of him had cared all along. She inhaled deeply, pushing aside the emotions threatening to rise. Okay, she said, finally. We take it slow. No pressure. No. A loud knock at the door made her jump. Emma turned, frowning, before moving to open it. And when she saw who was standing there, her entire body went cold. Sophia, dressed in a designer coat, heels clicking against the wooden floor, she stepped inside without an invitation. Nathan tensed beside her, his entire demeanor shifting into something dark, guarded. Hello, darling, Sophia said smoothly, her gaze flicking between them before settling on Emma with a sharp smirk. Long time, no see. Emma's stomach twisted. What are you doing here? Sophia let out a soft chuckle, tilting her head. You didn't think I'd just disappeared, did you? She turned to Nathan, crossing her arms. You never did explain why you suddenly left our engagement behind. I suppose now I have my answer. Nathan's expression was unreadable, his voice cold. This isn't your business, Sophia. Sophia's gaze darkened. Oh, I think it is. She turned back to Emma, smiling in a way that made Emma's skin crawl. You hid his children from him. She clicked her tongue. That's cruel. Even for you. Emma clenched her fists. I did what I had to do. Sophia let out a mock sigh. Nathan, darling, don't tell me you're actually planning to play father now. We both know this isn't your style. Nathan's jaw flexed. You don't know me. Sophia's smile faltered for the briefest second before she stepped closer to Emma, lowering her voice. You think this is going to have a happy ending, sweetheart? She scoffed. Nathan gets bored easily. He always does. Emma's throat tightened. Before she could respond, Nathan stepped between them, his presence solid and unwavering. Leave, he said, his voice ice. Cold. Sophia raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She simply smirked, stepping back toward the door. Fine. Have your little reunion. She glanced at Emma one last time. But don't say, I didn't warn you. Then, without another word, she was gone. Silence stretched in her absence. Emma let out a shaky breath, her heart still hammering in her chest. But when she turned to Nathan, expecting to see anger, she found something else entirely. determination. "I'm not leaving," he said quietly. Emma swallowed hard. She believed him, and that terrified her more than anything else. Emma barely had time to process Sophia's sudden appearance before Nathan turned back to her, his expression unreadable. She knew she should have been used to chaos by now. She had spent years living in fear of this exact moment, of her carefully built life unraveling in front of her. But something about the way Nathan was looking at her now sent a fresh wave of unease through her. Not anger. Not betrayal. But something deeper, something dangerous. "She won't stop," Emma said, her voice quieter than she intended. "She'll keep pushing." Nathan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't care about Sophia." Emma let out a humorless laugh. "Maybe you should. She obviously still thinks she has a say in your life." Nathan's jaw tightened. Not anymore. She hesitated, searching his face for some kind of doubt, some hesitation. But there was none. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to wonder, really wonder, what things might have been like if she had stayed. If she had told him the truth all those years ago instead of running. Would he have chosen her? Would he have fought for her then the way he was fighting for her now? Emma shook her head, forcing herself to refocus. None of that mattered anymore. What mattered now was Liam and Lily. "They don't know who you are," she reminded him. "To them, you're just a stranger." Nathan's gaze flickered, something unreadable crossing his face. "Then I'll change that." Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Nathan, this isn't. I want them to know me," he interrupted. His voice firm but not unkind. "I won't force anything, but I'm not going to disappear again. And I'm sure as hell not going to let Sophia or anyone else decide what happens between us." Between us. Emma's stomach twisted. "This isn't about us." His eyes darkened slightly. "Isn't it?" Her pulse quickened. "No, it's about the twins." Nathan stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "You think I don't see what you're doing?" His voice dropped lower. "You're scared, not just of me being in their lives, but of what happens if I'm in yours." Emma clenched her jaw.
"That's not true."
Nathan reached for her hand, his touch sending electricity up her spine. "Then look me in the eye and tell me you feel nothing." Her breath hitched. It was a trap. Because she couldn't look him in the eye and say that. Not when the heat between them was still there, lingering beneath the surface, waiting for one of them to break. Not when every part of her still remembered what it felt like to have his hands on her skin, his lips against hers. Not when she had spent 7 years trying, and failing, to forget. "Nathan," she whispered. His grip tightened just slightly. "Say it." She swallowed hard. "It doesn't matter." His jaw flexed. "It does to me." Emma squeezed her eyes shut, yanking her hand away before she could do something reckless. "We're not doing this." Nathan exhaled, running a hand through his hair before nodding. "All right. Fine. One step at a time." Emma turned away, needing space, needing air. But before she could retreat fully, he spoke again. "I want to take them out." She froze. "Dinner," he continued. "Nothing big. Just a few hours. Let me spend time with them." Emma's heart pounded. "Nathan, I don't." "They deserve to know me," he said, his voice softer now. "And I deserve to know them." Emma swallowed hard. She should say no. She should keep her distance. But when she turned back to face him, seeing the raw determination in his eyes, she knew she had already lost. Fine, she whispered. Nathan's lips twitched slightly. Fine. She let out a shaky breath. One dinner. That's it. For now. But deep down, she knew the truth. Nathan Hayes never stopped at just one. Emma had expected the dinner to be awkward. She had expected the twins to be shy, hesitant, maybe even uninterested in Nathan. She had been wrong. Liam, ever the curious one, had warmed up to Nathan almost immediately, asking him a million questions about everything from his job to his favorite superhero. Nathan, to her surprise, answered each one patiently, even chuckling when Liam proudly announced that he could build a Lego tower taller than the restaurant table. Lily, on the other hand, had been more guarded. She watched Nathan carefully, her sharp little eyes taking in every movement, every word, as if she were analyzing him. Emma had seen that look before, on herself. It wasn't until halfway through the meal, when Nathan effortlessly cut Lily's steak into perfect bite-sized pieces without being asked, that she finally spoke to him directly. "You're not bad," she admitted, twirling a fry in ketchup. Nathan smirked. "Not bad?" She shrugged. "Mom doesn't let just anyone eat with us." Nathan's gaze flickered toward Emma, something unreadable crossing his face. Emma quickly took a sip of water to avoid his eyes. She had thought this dinner would be a mistake. That letting Nathan into the twins' lives even for one night would make things worse. But sitting here watching them interact so naturally, she realized something terrifying. Nathan belonged. And she wasn't sure how to handle that. After dinner, they walked through the park just outside the restaurant. The air was crisp, the setting sun casting golden light over everything. Liam ran ahead, pretending to be a superhero, while Lily climbed onto a bench to scout for villains. Nathan stood beside Emma, hands in his pockets, watching them with a look she couldn't quite decipher. "They're incredible," he said quietly. Emma's chest tightened. "Yeah, they are." He exhaled, his jaw tensing slightly. "I miss so much." She swallowed hard. "You didn't know." Nathan turned to her then, his expression serious. "Because you didn't tell me." She looked away, guilt pressing down on her. "I was scared." His voice softened. "Of me?" Emma hesitated. "Of what you would do, of what you would say, of what it would mean for them." Nathan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I can't change the past. But I can be here now." Emma glanced at him, searching for any sign of doubt. But there was none. Just quiet, steady determination. She let out a slow breath. "We take this one step at a time." Nathan nodded. One step at a time. For the first time since he had walked back into her life, Emma let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't end in disaster. That maybe they could figure this out. Together. Months passed, and true to his word, Nathan never disappeared. He showed up. Every weekend, every school event, every scraped knee and lost tooth. He was there. And slowly, Emma let down her walls. One night, after the twins had gone to bed, Nathan stayed later than usual. They sat on the couch, sipping tea, the silence between them no longer uncomfortable. "You ever think about what could have been?" he asked suddenly, his voice low. Emma's heart skipped a beat. "All the time." She gave a small, sad smile. "I used to." Nathan set his cup down, turning to face her fully. "And now?" She inhaled sharply, but before she could answer, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "Nathan. Nathan. I bought this in Singapore," he said, flipping the box open to reveal a diamond ring. 7 years ago. Emma's eyes widened. "I was going to give it to you," he admitted, voice rough. "Before you disappeared?" Tears pricked her eyes. "Why are you telling me this now?" Nathan took her hand, his touch steady, warm. "Because I don't want to wonder about what could have been anymore." He squeezed her fingers gently. "I want to know what will be." Emma sucked in a shaky breath. This was real. Not just the past, not just regret. This was a choice. A future. A family. Nathan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Marry me, Emma." A tear slipped down her cheek. And this time, she didn't run. She nodded, her voice breaking. "Yes." Nathan exhaled, relief flooding his face as he pulled her into his arms. And for the first time in years, Emma let herself believe in happiness. For her. For him. For their family. Together. Lesson from story. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes the choices we make out of fear or desperation can shape our futures in ways we never expected. Emma's journey teaches us that running from the past doesn't erase it. It only postpones the moment when we have to face it. No matter how much time passes, the truth has a way of resurfacing. Nathan's persistence shows us that real love isn't about convenience or perfect timing. It's about showing up, fighting for what matters, and proving through actions that some bonds can never be broken. He missed years with his children, but instead of dwelling on the past, he chose to be present in their lives moving forward. The biggest lesson: love is not just about passion or fleeting moments. It's about trust, forgiveness, and the willingness to build something real. Emma learned that she wasn't alone, that she didn't have to shoulder everything on her own. And Nathan realized that love wasn't about control, but about choosing each other every single day. In life, we will all make mistakes. We will all have moments we regret. But what truly defines us is what we do next. Whether we let the past keep us captive or whether we have the courage to build something better. What about you? What did you take away from this story? Let me know in the comments. Also, where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. See you in the next one.